Okay, so let's get started, guys. So can I show you guys something absolutely crazy? Okay, so uh, if you guys are kind of new here, um, in the last kind of 33 months, for me personally, I passed all my courses. So on the first try, except C3. I passed C1 in 5 days, and that was with an 89%. So that was awesome. I passed course 4 in 12 days with 92%. I was trying to get the picture for you guys, but Humber was down today for some reason, so I wasn't able to. And I passed Sims 2 with a 96% as well. Okay. And with all of these stuff, I mean, since then, I have become a realtor. So that's since 2021. I'm working part-time right now. I grew the Facebook group to 5,000 or so members. So many of you guys are from there. So hello again, if you guys have seen me before. And I've tutored almost 500 or so people with a pretty good pass rate, which is really nice. And all of this is not just to brag or for whatever reason. This is just to say that whatever I've been doing is based on having read over like 5,000 pages of real estate content, like a lot. I've done it myself when I had to do the courses, and then now that I'm teaching so many people, I have to go through it again and again and again. And so that's based on a lot of hours of reading stuff. That's also based on about 10,000 or so hours spent just kind of going through materials, going through courses, and of course, creating a bunch of these stuff for you guys if you guys have been around the scene a little bit. So creating the checklist, I used to do the Q&As, doing the making the notes for you guys, some videos. So in the last kind of 33 months, all of this I want just to show you guys. I start with this just to show you guys that what I'm going to show you guys today actually works. Okay, these are not stuff that I've kind of randomly guessed about and I'm just trying to sell you guys something. Okay, these are stuff that I've actually done myself, that I've actually helped people with. And there's a lot of people in the industry who you guys might have even bought stuff from or you watch the videos who don't actually know what they're talking about. Okay, and they haven't done the course. A lot of people that make the kind of content similar to the way I do, they haven't even done it with Humber. And so this is just a preface. Make sure you kind of look out who you're kind of following. Okay. And so after all of these courses, after doing all of these stuff, after doing all of this reading materials and all of these things as well, um, I've made a lot of mistakes, but I've also learned a few things that kind of taught me kind of what was the right thing to do. Okay, so I've been able to learn a few things in terms of what works, what doesn't, and that's kind of what I want to share with you guys today. So I'm going to give you guys basically the 3+ years, 10,000 hours. I'm going to try and condense it for you guys today. And of course, we have the next session on Friday, if you guys come to that as well. And yeah, hopefully you guys don't make the same mistakes as I did. Okay, so all good? Just give me thumbs up if we're all good so far. Yes, yes, okay. All right. So 6 things that we're going to cover today is 1, we're going to look at how do we pass on the first try? Obviously, that is the most important thing for everybody. 2nd, how do we pass in 3 weeks or less? Okay. And then 3rd, we're going to look at the entire offer process, so the APS. 4th, the entire mortgage financing process. So kind of what is all the things involved in the financing process, the GDS, the TDS, and of course, we're going to look at a few different default options, everything that you guys might have already reviewed. The condominium breakdown, so the basics for condominiums, the confusing terms, how does it run, how is it maintained, how do we actually start one? And we're going to start with these first 2 at the top. Okay, so for today, we're actually going to do the first 3 points. So these 3 over here that you guys see, that's the first 3 things we're going to do. Next class, we're going to do these 2 at the bottom. And so, if you guys are coming on Friday, then you guys will get the whole thing. And of course, like I said, I'm going to be sending you guys a recording anyways. Okay, so first thing, before I kind of jump into anything, I just want to break a few of the common misconceptions with the real estate course. And that is that passing your exam, it does not have to take months. Okay. It is not hard and it does not have to be stressful. Okay. Now, keep in mind, over here I said it does not have to take months, does not have to be stressful. And I said it is not hard, meaning some people make it a lot longer than it needs to be. Some people make it more stressful than it needs to be. And the courses, in reality, if you really look at them, and this is based on my experience, they're not actually that difficult. Okay. And this is my experience tutoring people from all kinds of ages, all kinds of backgrounds. And a lot of people pass the courses once they kind of figure out the exact strategies and things that they need to do. And so just to give you guys a preface, kind of like to push your guys' boundaries a little bit, the students that I tutor usually, and these are some of the techniques I'm going to give with you guys today. So these students, they only study 1 to 2 hours a day. They only do like 200 practice questions in total before the exam. So I know many of you guys have passed it or other things like that. They're not even doing that. Only 200 or less. And they usually pass their exams in 3 weeks. So it's not taking them 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks or, a few months. And I know for those of you guys on the beast, I know it seems like it's never gonna end. It's like really, really long, right? And so the first thing I'm gonna look at, what are the habits of the actual top performing students that I've had? Okay, so what are the things that you guys can replicate so that you guys can actually apply this today and you can actually, speed up your course? So first thing is they're highly motivated. I'm going to break that down in a second. Second is they're highly practical. So they're very looking for actionable, tangible things they can do to improve the score. And they have healthy stress. And that's something I'm going to cover in a second as well. So for the first part, highly motivated. The highly motivated people, they are motivated by money, passion, or personal situations. Right? That's very simple. They are also willing to do whatever it takes to pass. And the question I want you guys to ask yourself at this point is, how motivated are you personally? And what are you motivated by? Okay. From my experience, the people that are passion motivated, are motivated by their passion to do real estate, those people generally perform better on the exams. And they have a lot less stress. And that's not to say that if you're motivated by these other things, you're not going to pass the courses. You totally will. And you totally can. But you have to adopt some of the same mindsets that they do naturally. Okay. Because the passion motivated people, the people who love real estate, who watch Selling Sunset on Netflix, who really want to do this as a career, these are people who see this as like a kind of goal, like something fun that they really want to get to and do. And what makes them super high performing is they are very naturally engaged. When I say naturally engaged, I mean they're not people that you have to shove to get to study. They're not people you have to constantly poke. Hey, did you study today? Did you not study? They're people that are self-starters because they love real estate, right? They want to do this. And I found a lot of people that are motivated by these other things a lot harder to do that. Okay. So first thing for you guys is you want to ask yourself, how motivated are you? And what can you look at in your situation that can motivate you more? Okay. And it's also very important to address one thing. Negative motivation is not as helpful. Negative motivation, meaning there's a lot of people who do the exams and their goal is to not fail, which is like they failed the exam one time, they're scared of failing the next time. And their goal is to not fail the next time. They're so worried about it. And so they're motivated, they're studying, but their mindset is on, oh shit, I'm going to fail again. The problem is when you keep focusing on, oh, I might fail, what ends up happening more often than not is you end up failing. So it's really important that you look upwards. You look towards where you want to actually go, which is obviously the pass. Okay. Second thing, these guys are highly practical. When I say practical, so let me break it down a little bit. First of all, to guarantee a pass on the exam, if I'm going to just guarantee it for you guys right now, you would either have to know 100% of the content by heart, right? You know it from front to the end. Or you'd have to know the exact exam questions, right? Both of these, at least ethically, are not really possible. Okay. So the second best way to pass is you need to obviously retain as much info as possible. Okay. This boils down to two things. One is the quantity. Okay. How many hours are we actually studying? And two is the quality. What is the effectiveness of our study method? Okay. Now, quantity, when I talk about hours studied, a lot of people put in a lot of hours, but if the quality is not there, they overcompensate. So they study more. And you might still pass. That's not a problem. But the same thing goes vice versa. Okay. The more quality your study methods are, the more quality your study materials, the less time you also have to put in as well. Meaning, if I obviously had the exact exam questions, I wouldn't have to study that much, right? I just have to study the questions and I'm good. If you don't have the questions, you're gonna have to study a lot more. Obviously, like I said, we don't have those questions, but we can choose methods and materials that are gonna get us closest to the highest quality materials we can, which is gonna reduce our study time as much as possible. Okay, and this is kind of the point of the group sessions that I do. This is why 3 weeks seems very fast, but it's not actually abnormally fast. This is actually normal, and you guys can do this too. So, finding the sweet spot comes out to three major things that you guys can do right now. Okay, the first is there's three ways to increase your scores automatically without you having to change much, like just a few things. The first is you have to be honest. Okay. Second is you have to change something, and I'll go in detail into that. And third is you have to always self-evaluate. Okay. So being honest. When I say be honest, I mean you have to be honest about where are you right now. I can tell you whenever I get reached out, I get messages or calls from people, and they're like, "Hey, Shiva, I'm on this course. Maybe I failed this course. I need some help. I'm struggling, confused. I don't know what to do." Oftentimes, I would say like 95% of the time, the very first thing I ask them is like, "What is the situation? Where are you right now? Where do you want to go? What are the things that you're doing right now? How often are you studying? What are the patterns that we can identify that are causing this to happen?" Because if you don't change anything, you're going to get the same results. And we know people have passed this course before. So we know it's possible. Okay. And you guys have probably seen those crazy posts as well. Some people passing in like a week or 2 weeks, meaning that's possible as well. We just have to look at what are we willing to do and what are we doing wrong. Okay. So a few things to ask yourself. Where am I right now? Be honest. Where are you right now in terms of your studying and your retention of the material? Right? Do you know as much as you need to know? How far are you on the modules? Where do you want to be? What's your timeline? Do you want to take 5 months to pass the course? Do you want to take 2 weeks? Each one demands a different level of study and effectiveness, right? How many hours have you been putting in, honestly? And be honest with this question. A lot of people are not honest about this. Really putting in the hours of study, not on the phone and studying, not cooking and listening to a podcast or the notes read out loud. Or how many hours have you actually been putting in, like fully focused? What study methods or materials have you been using? And even more importantly than that, have they been working? And not, yeah, I feel it's been working. You want to be very results based. What are the results you've been getting? Are you finding after studying, for example, let's say you grabbed my notes, after studying my notes for a day, are you finding you're remembering some of the information? If you are, then great. But can we remember more? Is there a better material out there that's going to help us remember more of it in a less amount of time? Okay. And you also want to look at the results that you might get on like your MCQ questions. Maybe you're doing passive. Passive gives you a great score number. So you got to use those score numbers. Now you don't want to tie yourself down. If you get a 74 on a passive test, that's not the end of the world. And that doesn't mean that you're failing. You might very well do really well in the exam. So that has no bearing. But you have to be honest about where you are and not kind of what you're feeling. So try to be very results based. Okay. This means you also want to track how many hours you're putting in. You want to track how many questions you're doing. You want to track what modules you've been doing and are you on track. And you want to track kind of the results that you've been getting. Everything has to be written and numbers based. So no kind of up in the air kind of feeling stuff. Okay. Are we all good so far? Okay. So from here, change something. When I say change something, like I said, you can't expect different results doing the same thing. So there's a few things we can change. A few of them you guys can do right now. A few of them are a little bit harder. One is put in more hours. Super simple. Even if you're using a really bad study material, the more hours you put in, the better score you're going to get on the exam. That's pretty simple. The easier way is to change your materials, which means trying other things, or changing your study methods. Now, my recommendation is if you don't want to spend hours and hours and hours studying, then the bottom two tips are probably the best for you, which means can we find better materials out there that maybe have not been working for us? And can we change our study methods? Sometimes the materials are fine. These are okay. Sometimes the study methods are wrong, right? If you're listening to the notes read aloud in your car on your way to work at 6 a.m., chances of you being focused is a little bit lower, right, than if you were really sitting at a desk and studying. So sometimes the materials are fine. That's your study methods. Sometimes the materials are bad and your study methods are fine. You're studying, you're sitting at your desk, you're not distracted, but for some reason, you're not getting the material, or it's not preparing you well, or you're still doing bad on the MCQs. So all of that is based on your evaluation. You have to ask yourself those questions. Now, one thing to keep in mind, only change one thing at a time. After this call, don't go out and change your whole study routine. The problem is we can't evaluate it like that. If you change everything, there's no way we can evaluate what changed and what worked and what didn't, right? Ask yourself the question, pick one thing that you think maybe is the problem, change it, see if that works, see if it doesn't. Okay. If you do this, remember, no one's forcing you to do your exam tomorrow. If you do this studying, it might take a little bit more time initially, but the rest of your exams will go by way faster. And this is why I didn't C1. This is why C1 was so fast for me. It only took 5 days, right? But that was because I was kind of fresh out of like high school. So I knew exactly how I learned. For you guys, if it's been a while, that's okay. But you just got to take a little bit of time. How do you learn best? And then you can streamline from there. Okay. Now, to give you guys something practical to take away, these are some things you can actually do now, which actually work. And these are based on the students that I've tutored. So keeping the same study time every day, that helps a lot. I know it's very simple, but this is something that a lot of people who get high scores, they do. Okay. Second is focus time. They have zero distractions. Okay. And when I say zero distractions, I mean like absolutely zero. I know sometimes you guys have kids and you guys have, family members around and dogs. So this is a little bit difficult, but you don't have to have absolutely 100% focus. But remember, the more focus you have, the less likely it is that you're going to do bad on the exam. The more focus you're studying, the higher your exam score is going to be. The less focus you're studying, the lower your exam score is going to be. Okay. And in terms of the actual materials, so a big mistake I still see a lot of people using is they're studying directly from the Humber slides. For those of you guys that have looked at the Humber slides, you guys would have noticed the Humber slides are hundreds of slides and they are confusing, they're repetitive, and it never ends. It takes hours to get through it, right? Even if you're just to click continuously, it takes hours. So using the slides are not the best method. You can use them for sure, and that's the material that's going to be on the exam. But these notes that you might find online, either the notes I give for free, or maybe Minicram or some other stuff, notes are going to be your best friend. Okay, notes summarize the content for you. And I know there are some people that are anxious out there who are worried that they're going to miss something. From my experience, doing this for a long time, the notes are fine. And people do fine with the notes, even like completely disregarding the slides. Okay, so make sure you're using some sort of summarized notes. Next, you want to use practice questions. Practice questions can come in many forms, and you don't have to do thousands. When I did my courses, when I passed C1 in 5 days and I passed C4 in 12 days, I actually only used the Humber module questions. Those questions that come up randomly in the modules. That's all I used. So some people might need more than others, but remember the notes and questions go together. You don't need thousands of questions, but you do need to understand the material. And this is where a lot of people go wrong. You bypass it, you see the 1,000 questions, and you go question, 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 question. But again, my kind of mantra is focus on the quality, not quantity. It's not the amount of hours we studied. It's not the amount of questions we did. It's how much did you actually retain. If you do 10 questions, if I ask you about them out loud, you should be able to tell me why those questions had those answers. If you can, then what did we even do in the last hour? Okay, so it's not the amount of questions, it's kind of exactly, what is the quality that you're getting out of it. Okay, effectiveness, not efficiency. So pretty much exactly what I was talking about, which is focus on the quality, not the quantity. All right, last thing. So they're highly motivated, they're highly practical, and they have healthy stress. Healthy stress looks something like a little bit of stress, a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of worry, but they are not incapacitated. They're not discouraged. They're not depressed. They're ready to do the exam and they're motivated to do it. And they still think they're going to pass. They're just a little bit worried, a little bit nervous. That is healthy stress. If you have stress that outside of that, you have to keep in mind stress comes from this feeling of confusion, this feeling of, I don't know what to do and how I'm going to do next. You're fearing the future or you're fearing the past. You're thinking, oh shit, I didn't do anything for the last 2 weeks and my exam is in 2 days. All of that causes stress. The way to combat stress and make it work in your favor is you have to make a plan. You got to take action immediately. Okay. You have to ask those questions that I gave you guys. Where am I right now? What do I want to do? Where do I want to go? Right? Be honest with yourself, how many hours you've been putting in, and then look for the patterns. What can I change? What materials can I change? And that's how you're going to combat the stress. You make a plan. And once you have the plan, it's super simple from there. Okay. So use it to drive your action, not to paralyze you. Okay. Now, before we move on, I want to also add one more thing, which is a note about overachievers. So in my sessions that I've done for the last kind of 2 years, there's always, in every single group session or so, there's always one or two people that are overachievers. Meaning if I tell them to do 2 hours of study, they do 3. If I tell them to practice 10 questions, they do 20. If I tell them to, read module 1, they'll read module 1 and 2. The thing about overachievers is they always win. They always win. Okay. I've never had an overachiever in my classes that has never not passed the exam. And that's just the nature of overachieving. You're putting in more hours and you're really looking at what am I doing wrong and trying to improve that constantly. So naturally, just because they're putting in more hours and they're looking at the quality, they're increasing their score, exponentially. Every time they study, they're tracking everything. They're looking for what they did wrong. They're taking all my advice. They're asking questions in classes, and they're really, really, really trying to do the best that they can. Okay, working harder, putting more hours, and they're using better stuff. However, they also are always self-evaluating, and this is where it comes in. You have to be honest with yourself. Where are you right now? Where do you want to be? And they're always doing this. I know I've said this before, but they're doing this at the beginning, in the middle of studying, at the end of the studying, and they're making sure they're on track. If you guys have fell off, maybe you've taken a week off or a month off, or maybe you haven't been studying for a little bit, this is usually the case where you didn't self-evaluate, you fell off because you kind of forgot the goal, or you had too many things coming up and you didn't plan to jump back in. I mean, you said, oh, I have a busy weekend. I'll get back to studying when I get back to it. And you never get back to it, right? I'm not saying they don't have things that come up, but they make the plan. Okay, this weekend is for my family. I'm going to start studying on Tuesday or Wednesday. And then they commit. Okay. So just taking in these things, okay, the things that we looked over. If you do these things, you're automatically going to be in the top 10% of students. Okay. And this is because you're going to eliminate all of the procrastination, the discouragement, the test anxiety that we get, the confusion, the stagnation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of these things come from not having a plan and not knowing what to do. So if you did not get anything from the last half an hour, the main idea is the way to get back up, the way to get back into it, the way to pass your exam is you got to identify the problem. Okay, make a plan, right? Look for the patterns, and you got to take action immediately, starting today. 10 minutes is better than an hour. 10 minutes is better than not doing anything at all. And 5 minutes is better than, skipping 5 days of study. Okay? So that is the first thing. That is the first part. That's how people pass on the first try. That's how they pass in 3 weeks or less. They're focusing on that quality, they're finding the problems, and they're self-starters. Okay? Now, those are all kind of mentality changes, which I think you guys can do immediately, and you should do immediately, and you should look at kind of what your situation is like. But I want to give you guys something even more tangible, a real concept that I can teach you guys today that is going to apply to your courses. And that's when we're going to look at the APS. Okay, so the APS, now this is the agreement of purchase and sale. If you guys have already looked at this, or you're already familiar with this, and you're thinking, Shiva, this is a really easy concept. Why are we doing this? So a few reasons. One, the APS is on every single course in the program. Course 1, course 2, course 3, the simulations, course 4, simulation again. Every single course. There's no way they put it on every single course without it changing a little bit. Meaning, if you're on anything past course 2 and you're still studying the APS because it came up again in a module and you had to review it, then we didn't study it well enough in course 2. That's simple. Okay. Meaning if you know the APS really, really well in course 2 and you study it fully, you shouldn't have to look at it again in course 3 and course 4 or the simulations, which is already going to save you tons of time. Again, I'm talking about quality. A lot of people, what they do, they study the course 2 APS a little bit, they pass the exam, they forget it, and then they study it again, right? We're wasting time, hours, right? The focus is how can we minimize that study time? Study once, study well. So we're going to look at the APS right now. I'm going to share my screen. We're going to take a look at it. And yeah, I'm going to break down everything for you guys. Okay, are you guys still with me? Right, I'm a buyer. I want to put an offer on the property. This is the form I'm going to fill out. I'm going to send to the seller. So just like the sessions I do with the group, I'm going to be very exam focused. So if there's stuff I'm skipping it for good reason. You don't need it for the exam. Using this in real life, anyways, is very different than the course teaches you. But I'm going to give you guys exact kind of what's going to come up in the exam. All right, so first page, if we look at this over here, we got a few different things. So let me just highlight this. All right, so we got buyer's name, we got the seller's name, we have the address, super simple stuff, nothing crazy so far. And then we have the purchase price and we have the deposit. So for the purchase price, if you're on course 3, course 4, this should be easy. This should be quick review. Obviously, we're going to put the price somewhere over here. So we're going to say, 500,000. Okay, I'm going to offer 500K for the property. Okay, and then obviously you're going to write in words over here. 500,000. That's your offer price for the APS. Now, if I'm a buyer and I give this offer to the seller has a few options. Accept, reject, counter. If they accept it, great. If they reject it, that's tough. If they counter it, counter is very important. If they counter it, they have to, 1, cross this out, 2, they're going to write their new number on top, maybe 550. And 3, they're going to initial it. So if I'm the seller, I'm going to put my initials. Okay. That is the counter offer process for anything, anywhere on the agreement, whether it's a purchase price, whether it's a deposit, whether it's a clause, a condition, a word, a sentence, it doesn't matter. You cross it out, you write what you want, and then you initial. When I send this back to the buyer is going to look at this. The buyer, if they want to accept it, they're going to put their initials. So maybe their initials is A. That's the buyer's initials. Okay, that means they're happy with the change, they're okay with it, they're going to continue. Okay. Now, obviously, keep in mind when we're doing these counter offers, we got to make sure we change the words. So 550. So we're going to add 50 over here. And it's kind of the same thing. We're going to initial. And then we send this over to the buyer. If they accept it, they're going to put their initials. So counteroffer, very, very simple. Now, counteroffer versus amendment. That is very different. A lot of people get confused. So a counteroffer is when we are going back and forth. But the key part about the counteroffer, and you guys can write this down if you have something to write down with. The counteroffer is when we are making offers before it is accepted. Sorry, not even making offers, making changes before the offer is accepted. Okay, so I have this offer, I sent it to somebody, they don't like it, they send it back, I don't like it, I send it back. We can go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Okay. The amendment is making changes, any change. It could be the price, it could be the deposit, it could be a condition, a clause, anything, any change. But the key thing is after the offer is accepted. Okay, the buyer gave me the offer, I accepted it. Now, if anybody needs to make a change, we have a contract, and to change the contract, we need an amendment. And the amendment is a separate form. Okay, so keep that in mind. You will get tested on that. That is the difference. Now, briefly to show you guys the amendment, kind of what it looks like. So the amendment looks something like this over here. Okay, so it's really just a blank form, right? We've got a blank form here, and we're inserting whatever kind of things we want to delete. Maybe I'm deleting the purchase price, the home inspection clause. I copy paste the clause here. I copy paste it again, but I'm going to change the thing I want to change. So if I want a few more days for my home inspection, I'm going to change the date in that paragraph, and I'll put that here. Okay, and that is it. That's pretty simple. You do that, you sign the back of the page, and this stuff we're going to go through later. But that is it. That is the amendment. Okay, so only when we already have a contract and we're trying to change something. Okay, back to this. For our deposits, two things: herewith and upon acceptance. Herewith is when we are giving our deposit with the offer. So deposit with the offer. I'm a buyer, I like the property, I'm giving my initial offer, and I'm giving the deposit with that offer, even though it hasn't been accepted yet. Upon acceptance, just like it sounds like, deposit once the offer is accepted. Okay, I'm giving my offer. When the seller accepts my offer, then I'm going to send over the deposit later, usually within 24 hours. Okay, so deposit with the offer, deposit once the offer has been accepted. All right, and this applies for everything. This applies for your condo APS. This applies for your commercial APS. So for the C3 people, that's your condo APS. For the C4 people, that's your commercial APS. It's the exact same thing. Okay. And then, of course, initials of both buyers and sellers at the bottom of the agreement. Okay. Now, there's a lot of clauses here. These are all called pre-printed clauses. Now, in the usually when we have a lot more time in the sessions, I go through everything. I'm going to try and pick out the most important ones so you guys can take something, valuable away from this today. So the most important, naturally, is going to be the first two: irrevocability and completion date. Again, after course 2, this should be kind of ingrained. You should know this by heart. Irrevocability is going to be your deadline that you're giving the other person to accept, consider, reject your offer. Meaning, if I am a buyer putting an offer on a property, I'm going to put buyer over here. Why? Because this offer shall be irrevocable by me. I'm giving the seller the deadline. I'm saying this is my deadline for you to give me an answer. Then I put any kind of time, any kind of date. Usually we're going to be 48 to 72 hours after offer acceptance. Or sorry, after offer date. So if I'm giving the seller my offer, I'm going to give them 2 to 3 days to decide. Meaning, maybe let's say the 31st day of May. Okay, 2024. That's my offer. Now, when we do the counter offer, the seller countered me for $550. The seller's also going to have to change some of the stuff here. One, they got to change buyer to seller. Why? Because now the seller is going to give me the deadline to accept, reject, or counter their counteroffer. Right? So seller came, said, hey, here's $550. I'm going to set the deadline, so I'm going to put seller here. And then I might change the date as well. So I might actually put let's say the 3rd of June. So 3rd of June. So I can put that over here. Okay. And then, of course, they're going to initial all of these. So if I'm the seller, I would put something like my initials everywhere. So you do that for all the changes. Okay. So again, your deadline for the other person to consider, accept, reject your offer. Okay. Completion date. Completion date is the closing date, the global closing date. Now, for my C2 people, the closing date is going to be 60 to 90 days after acceptance. For my C4 people, so for commercial, my closing date is going to be months or years, depending on how big the deal is. Okay. If you're selling let's say a 5-plex, like you got a small building with 5 units, maybe a few months. If you're selling a plaza, a large office building with many, many units, that can take a year or a few years. Okay. Now for the people on C4, you guys are going to get a lot more situation-based questions. So this stuff that I'm teaching you is the foundation. This is the basics. But for you guys, you have to go a step farther. You have to think, how does this apply to different situations? Because their questions are going to be, you have a buyer, he wants an office unit. This is his situation. What should you advise him? And that's where these stuff are going to come in. For the C2 people, a little bit easier for you guys. You guys are just going to have pretty straightforward questions. And for the C1 people, this is stuff that you're going to see very soon, or you're going to see glimpses of it in your C1. So if you get this stuff now, it's going to be a lot easier for you going into the beast, which is C2. Okay. So let's keep it rolling. I'm going to skip over a few of these stuff here. They're either very easy or you're not going to need them. I'm going to cover one thing here, and then I'm going to hop to the last page just because of the time. So title search. A lot of people think they know the title search, but there's a lot of parts to the title search. And there's a reason why it's very, very important, and why you get tested on it on every single exam. The title search is the buyer's opportunity to make sure the title, the property they're buying, as being registered in their name, the title, is clear. Clear meaning there's nothing that can affect their use or enjoyment of the property. So the term they like to use is use or enjoyment. When I say that, I mean, when we look at the title, on the title, if there is an issue, it's going to be registered there. We're going to see it. So we're going to have stuff like liens, stuff like easements, stuff like encroachments. Okay. We're going to have stuff like all of those things that you guys saw in the course one, right? Adverse possession and, the government is cheat and all these other stuff. That's going to be registered on the title. Now, for liens, for those of you guys that don't know what a lien is when I owe somebody money and they put a warning on my property. The warning can either be, hey, pay me back. You can do whatever you want with the property, but you do have to pay me back by this deadline. In that case, sometimes if I'm the seller, I might just sell the property. And then that lien can get transferred over to the buyer's name. And the buyer has to pay my lien. In other cases, other lenders who you owe money to will say, hey, you owe me money. I'm freezing your property. You can't do anything with it. And you got to pay me by this deadline. The second scenario has no effect on the buyer. We don't care about that. The first scenario, though, which usually happens with property taxes, you don't pay your property taxes, you can still sell your property, and the buyer has now this lien of a few hundred, a few thousand they have to pay. That's why we do this. Now, we find this lien. What are we going to do after that? Well, title search lets us, one, make an objection. Okay. I'm the buyer. I can say, hey, seller, I found the lien. I'm not going to buy it until you fix it. Two, once I make the objection, now the seller can fix the issue. They can pay off the lien. They can fix whatever issue I brought up. If they fix it, great, we can continue. If seller does not fix the issue, then we have two options here. Okay, option A is I'm the buyer, I continue with the deal. I say forget about it, let's just continue, I'm happy with it. B is I cancel the deal. And I can walk away. That's the important part. There's no other way to get out of a contract other than the title search and you make an objection once you sign the contract. There's no other way. Okay, so that's why this is very, very important. Now, a last point before I move on here, requisition date is your title search deadline. That's the deadline you have to do the title search, and that's about 15 to 30 days before closing. Okay. All right. So that is the title search. Now, again, there's a lot of other stuff. I'm going to kind of zoom over to this last page here. I want to break down a few more things here. So on our last page, this is where the signatures happen. So for this, we're going to have something here called spousal consent. Spousal consent, should be simple, but you have to know it for all the courses. If I'm married and I am living in a property, which is my primary residence, my spouse has equal rights to the property. If I want to sell it, I need their signature. Even if they're on the title or if they're not, I need their signature. If I am a family law couple, which means I actually am in common law, which means I'm just living with them. I'm not actually married with this person. You do not need spousal consent, and whoever's on the title can do whatever they want. Okay. So for this spousal consent, it's only for our, what we call matrimonial homes. That's when you need spousal consent, which just means you're actually married. Okay. And then confirmation of acceptance, that's where we're going to have the signature. Only one person signing. That's going to be your seller. That's going to be your buyer, whoever's accepting the contract. If I'm a buyer and I give an offer to the seller, they're the ones who's going to be accepting that. Okay. All right. Now, to touch on this last part here, acknowledgement. For those of you that don't know, it's going to be where we're trying to get copies. We want copies of the contract, and we're going to forward this to our lawyers. Okay. So seller, buyer, they're both going to sign their signs. Okay. Now, there's a lot more stuff to look at. So of course, review this later, and I'll send you guys a recording. But I'm going to show you guys a few more things about the APS, which is relevant to all the other courses as well. So obviously, we have our amendment. We also have the notice of fulfillment. So for those of you guys that are on C2, C3, C4, you need to know the condition precedent, subsequent, true condition precedent. This is where the notice of fulfillment comes in. So it's a bit much to dive into right now, but condition precedent, if we're trying to fulfill something like a home inspection, this is the form we use. It's always helpful to get the form so you can get a visual and you'll never forget it after you see it. So it's super simple. Copy paste the clause and we sign at the bottom. Same thing for waivers. Waivers also go with condition precedents, right? And these are clauses that we can fulfill. We can also waive it. Waive meaning forget about the condition I put in, I'm still going to buy your house. Okay. For my C3 people, we got the condo APS, or sorry, this is the commercial APS. So this is C4 people. Not much changes. Just looking at this first page, you guys can see, for those of you on C4, is very, very similar. For C4 people, your test will come from the additional clauses at the back, the custom clauses. So really study office, retail, industrial, farm properties, and really study the differences and situation questions. What additional custom clauses would I have to add? That's where your questions are going to come from. And for the C3 people, the condo APS, very similar, very identical. Just looking at the first page, you can see very identical, but there is six different clauses. And they're pretty easy to identify if you just go through it. But you're going to have stuff about the status certificate, the board, approvals, meetings, a bunch of other stuff. But there's only 6 differences. Okay. All right. Is everybody still with me? Did that help? Did you guys learn something? Yes. So having just done the APS, having just kind of given you guys a few of the at least high performing tips that I've seen with the students that I've done. Do you guys feel like that was at all helpful, a little bit helpful? Yeah, you guys can put yes or no. I mean, your no is completely fine. Okay, we're getting a yes. Okay. And okay, awesome. And do you guys feel like that saved you at least some of the hours that it took me to kind of put into it and really learn kind of what doesn't work and also what does? Okay, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to hear it. For those of you guys that like this and you guys want more stuff, if you guys want more stuff, some free stuff for you guys. Some of you guys may already have this, which is great, but you guys can grab my notes. You can grab my website. You can grab the Facebook group. You guys can grab the checklist for all the courses. The C1 checklist is in the group for free, so check that out. The course 2, course 3, you can grab for free as well. You just go to that link. You guys can take a picture if you want that. So again, it breaks down every single module and all the concepts that are going to be on the exam. And I'm telling you, this is not like randomness. This is stuff that I literally use. I give to all my students. So yeah, that is the link, the bit.ly. So I can kind of put it here for you guys. So bit.ly. This is kind of the link. That's for course 2. Course 3 is a similar thing. All right, let me put that one more time. Oh, yeah, you guys get the point. You guys can take a picture. Okay. And for the serious students, for anybody that found this helpful, that wants something more similar to this, then for you guys might be interested in the group sessions. That's only if you guys really want to go in depth and you're really committed to getting this done in a short amount of time. for that, that's where we do kind of 5 classes in total. That's where it's pretty much similar to what we did today. We're going through the exact exam tested concepts. And this is based on, my last 2 years doing this over hundreds of students, thousands of hours. And yeah, I'm going to give you guys practice questions that's been tested again and again and again. And, we have a good pass rate of like 85% or something. Okay, so again, there's already free stuff. You guys don't need to join. This is only if you really, really want to get this done in a short amount of time. And yeah, I've done this with a few people. This is like Dinah. I think she was like a few months ago. She finished course 2. I think she got like a 91%. So that was really good. There was also Amit. Amit was a mortgage agent. He was doing these things side by side. It was a bit hard for him. So I was able to help him out from like C2, I think. C2, we did C3, we did C4. We were able to get through everything. And I think he got licensed. When was this? I think last year, maybe December, I think. So this is just 2 of the people. And of course, we have all these fun, friendly faces. Some of you guys are going to be in here today. So shout out to whoever has been part of the groups. This is a small portion, but we have a lot of people that have joined them. Okay, let me take some questions because I don't know if this meeting is going to end. So hopefully I can kind of get the questions out.